Want to introduce one of the spark plugs on the Providence City Council, David Salvatore. Come on on. Thank you, sir.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Get you
All
right
right.
over here.
Great.
And
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, City of Providence, this is a city-state. How Providence goes is how Rhode Island goes. I think people who live in Barrington and Cumberland don't always understand that and appreciate that. And, this is where technology is and the colleges are and the hospitals are. How do we get Providence to that next level? We've got some recovery, I think, in some state. We might even get this road this road paved.
Took long
There's
enough, but it's
rumors about
happening.
it, right? It's only been about 7-8 years in the making. With all the powerful politicians that go drink on Circe on Friday afternoons, you would think this would have been paved of all the streets in the entire city first up.
Well, it's happening now, and I'm glad you brought up infrastructure, Josh, because that is an important component of building a city and creating an environment that's not only friendly to prospective home buyers and new residents, but businesses as well. It's one of those areas that a lot of companies will look at, especially from a transportation perspective,
right,
and an overall quality of life. So it's great to see that Weybosset Street is finally getting repaved,
yeah.
And we're looking to do more of that for the city of Providence. As you know, we are going to borrow $40 million for road improvement, park improvement, some school infrastructure. But that's, again, important to quality of life throughout the city of Providence, and that's what's going to attract, again, new residents and businesses to our state's capital city.
And listen, we've got a lot of need in it. I was on the council many moons before you joined on, and we're somewhat talking about the same issues as we were then. We haven't been able to hit some of the structural issues, and they cost a lot of money. I mean, not only do they delay things and create some vulnerability and some fragileness to the city's finances, but it costs a lot of money when you're borrowing $40 million rather than paying as you go and those types of things. We've got the 5th highest, I think, commercial tax rate. I don't think there's a homeowner that's feeling like they're undertaxed in Providence. I think we're one of the highest on that front. Car tax, we're going to see some relief finally, but we have maybe the most brutal car tax structure known to mankind.
It is the most brutal car tax known to mankind, I promise you that.
There are so many people who pay more in their car tax than their car is worth. I mean, literally. How do we shatter this? How do we get the city to the next level from a fiscal standpoint, which then allows us to do a lot more things?
Yeah, Jeff, that's going to take long-term planning and
Yeah.
thoughtful thinking. During my first time on the council, we created an economic development task force. One of the recommendations that came out of that task force was to create a long-term 10-year strategy around the city's finances. And that shouldn't only include how we spend money, but also how we generate new revenue for our state's capital city. And that's attracting new development.
Right.
I don't think we're going to be able to tax our way out of our fiscal issues. It's great to see some new development happening downtown and in other parts of the city, but asking the homeowners throughout the city of Providence to once again foot the bill for the city's financial challenges would be unfair. And quite frankly, it wouldn't be smart from an economic development standpoint, because a lot of businesses are looking at the state's capital city as a place to do business, but when they look at some of the fiscal issues facing Providence, there might be some hesitation because of that. But I think we're almost there. I think on the short term, we've done a very good job of managing our finances responsibly. But with that said, we have
a massive surplus.
We did have a surplus, and it's great to see that we are going to finally erase that cumulative deficit, because again, bondholders, they will look at that number, and it will cost the city of Providence more money for infrastructure and some improvement.
Absolutely.
If we're not addressing that. With that said, we still have legacy costs to address. That's upwards of $1 billion, and on the healthcare side, that's an additional.
Yeah. If you look, we wrote on it this week in an editorial. It's about $3 billion if you take all the buckets, put them together. Not even really talking about the need to staff up I think the police department. I think that's one of the key issues. You talk about it a lot. Your ward cares about it a lot. Of this feeling that the Providence police are understaffed, and they are understaffed. I mean, union officials may complain no matter what, but this is a real situation in which there's a need to improve the staffing. One of the things, and we get this feedback a lot, and nobody knows the answer. It seems like nobody's gonna do a project in Providence without getting a significant tax stabilization.
Mm-hmm.
Do we run the risk of creating two tiers of the new developers get all the discounts, and the people who've been here for a while get stuck, paying off some of those debts?
Yeah, and there has to be a matter of fairness.
Yeah.
You mentioned we have the 5th highest commercial property tax rate in the country. That is not how you grow your tax base.
Yeah, that is not how you bring businesses to Providence,
That's
right?
correct. And without the tax stabilization agreement, we really don't have another tool in the toolbox to attract new commercial development. With that said, again, we shouldn't be asking city taxpayers who have lived here their entire lives, or the small mom and pop businesses that are in all of our wards,
Yeah.
to foot the bill for some of these high cost projects. That's why I have proposed a standardized system, okay, for tax stabilization agreements. No
Yeah,
more than
right.
12 years, okay, everybody's treated fairly. Developers do not have to jump through hoops to do business with the city. Let's take the politics out of it.
Right.
Okay, and let's provide the mayor with something that he can sell when he's telling folks in the business community, Providence is a great place to live, and it's a great place to do business.
And it's a level playing field, so it doesn't matter if you're a Providence developer or a Boston developer, New York developer, because you hear from folks up in Boston who do business, and they say, listen, I don't want to get Rhode Island,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's literally the word they say, that there's a different, the real estate market's very interesting, and you wear that hat of being, the top dog in the real estate organization in Providence. It's a complicated real estate market. You've got wildly increasing housing costs, you've got almost no inventory, and you've got static wages for the most part in Rhode Island. How is, both as a councilman and head of the Realtors, Greater Providence Realtors Association, how did those two things get dealt with? And I think they're aligned. I mean, the interest of the realtors and the interest of the city are aligned in those things. How do you deal with those complexities?
So just for clarification purposes, I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Rhode Island Association of Realtors.
Gotcha, sorry.
That's okay. I think the first thing, on a statewide basis, we
Yeah.
just look at our zoning laws.
Yeah.
Right, it's very difficult to amend a zoning ordinance in the state of Rhode Island. In Providence, we should be allowing builders with the opportunity to build new homes.
Right.
To build new homes. What we're finding in the real estate market is those middle-class homes between $200,000 and $300,000 are not available. So
Anywhere.
Anywhere. And I can speak to my ward. When a house goes on the market, it's turned over in a very short period of time. That's how competitive this real estate market is.
I saw houses on the North Main Street side of Hope Street that are going on the market, that when I was on the council 20 years ago sold for $120,000, $135,000, $145,000, going for over $400,000. I mean, it's just.
Well, I think that speaks to Providence.
Yeah.
And Providence is an attractive place to live.
Yeah.
It's funny when I speak with Rhode Islanders and I ask them, what is our greatest asset?
Yeah.
The first thing they say, oh, we have great beaches.
Yeah.
No, our greatest asset is our proximity to Boston and New York. And I think that's what is attracting, and I can speak for my ward in Elmhurst, it's attracting a lot of new, young families back
Yeah.
into our neighborhoods. And that's going to be very important from a sustainability perspective.
But we've got to improve. I mean, if you want young families who I think come because there's cool places to live,
Mhm.
cool neighborhoods to walk in, and it's great until they turn 7
Mhm.
or 6, and then the pressure's on of how do we retain them when, we've got some isolated, well-performing schools, but the vast majority of the schools are at the bottom of the state rankings, and the state rankings are at the bottom of the New England rankings.
Yeah, we have to start with our school infrastructure.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear the governor and the mayor starting to talk about this publicly, that we do have to
The general
address.
treasurer was just talking about
And
it.
the general treasurer was very outspoken several weeks ago as well. So I'm happy to hear that there's now some dialogue around fixing our schools. But to my point earlier, it's important that we're addressing the needs of our infrastructure, both whether it's our roads, our bridges, or our schools, that we're addressing them in a timely manner, that we have a strategic plan in place on how to address those needs. Because it costs a lot of money.
It costs
lot of
real money.
taxpayer
Yeah.
dollars to fix these infrastructure issues in the long term. And that's why I'm such a proponent of long-term strategic thinking.
Don't hold me exactly to the numbers, but I think in the state report that just came out, just to fix the deficiencies at Classical High School was $17 million to replace Classical High School, which really should be replaced. I mean, it's almost of a different era. I think there's a moat there and some other things. It was $78 million. So mammoth cost. We are into election cycle.
We are.
And it's a very interesting time. It's been, Kobe Dennis was on, I think Monday or Tuesday with us, talking about his vision of the city of Providence. Is there any interest in Councilman Salvatore of looking at running for mayor in 2018?
I'm going to keep all options open at this point, Josh. I still have a lot of work to do on the city council. One of the greatest honors of my life has been representing the people who have been so instrumental in shaping my life.
Yeah.
You know, I was an 8-year-old paper boy delivering the evening bulletin, and I got to know a lot of our neighbors, and it's been a great, like I said, honor to represent these folks who have been so instrumental in my life. I don't think it's any secret that at some point I will be interested in the mayor's seat, just based on not only my skill set, but my love and passion for the city. So we'll have some decisions to make. I'll keep all options open. You'll be one of the first to know.
We want to be the first to know, gosh darn it. One industry that we have definitely adversely impacted is the 8-year-old paperboy industry. There are not a lot of jobs that go local for 8-year-old paperboys to deliver the pixels. Let's just jump over to maybe a couple of the other issues that are facing Providence. There seems to be two realities. There's one of the data coming out of public safety about crime, and then there's one about how people feel about crime.
Sure.
And there's, I think, a frustration by many people who live in the city, and I know it is on the south side, but and the east side, your neighborhood, I mean, you just see it in social media. How do we do a better job if the numbers are good, which people sometimes question the numbers and how they're exactly being put together. How do we do a better job of just making people feel safer and feel better? You can't walk 3 blocks here without functionally being at least verbally accosted by somebody who is homeless or is panhandling and doesn't give you a safe feel. Women who work in the office definitely don't have a safe feel. How do we do a better job with those things?
Well, I think we need a greater presence of police officers in the city.
Yeah.
I spoke earlier that we don't have enough, and the staffing levels are not where they should be for a city of 180,000 people.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, we have to bring staffing levels to where they should be. Perception at times, most of the time, is reality.
Yeah.
If you go on the, and I can speak to my ward, the Elmhurst Neighborhood Crime Watch page.
Yeah.
There's a lot of activity on the Elmhurst Neighborhood Crime Watch page. And it's not because Elmhurst is an unsafe place to live. Again, we have a lot of great young families living in that neighborhood, but there are a lot of petty crimes.
Yeah.
Right? So I think increasing our staffing levels coupled with resident engagement.
Yeah.
Okay, and Elmhurst does a phenomenal job of being engaged. That's because of the great relationship that the communities have with the Providence Police Department. The Providence Police Department has always made themselves accessible to the communities, especially.
So I'm gonna argue that. I'm gonna say those police officers do, but we've written a number of times about the deficiency in the access to information for the media and the public compared to peer cities around. I'll give you an example. We have a site up in Worcester. We have a Go Local Worcester. They sent out a press release on any violent crime of any significance. This city never sends out a press. There's real social media interaction, and the accessibility of the police department to questions by the public or by the media is instantaneous. It is what it is, right? Because you don't answer the question, it's not getting any better.
That's right. So several months ago, I introduced a resolution asking the administration to increase the amount of communication and data that's available to the public. I've always been a firm believer in making city data transparent and
critically
accessible,
important. Yeah.
not only to residents, but to the media. You folks are reporting on this on a daily basis, and we appreciate that, that you're getting information out to our neighborhoods. During my first term, we made investments in transparency. There's the online checkbook now, where you can look at revenues and disbursements related to city taxpayer dollars.
Right.
I think we can always do better, we can always improve. And that's why I introduced a resolution just asking the administration, which they have embraced, to provide more data, additional data, especially around crime.
Yeah, I think it's critically important. I think people, when they can't get information, worry more about it. I mean, on the east side of Providence, and they're a tough crowd, as we all know, you know, it's a third party. It's a woman who volunteers, Cheryl Simmons, who really does the crime reporting better than the police department or the media. I mean, here's a person and she collects everything and then sends it out on a listserv, and it's incredibly important because you can see the trends. And if I were a police officer and I'm covering the east side, I'd want to see the trends and have that data.
And that's attributable to, again, the open relationships with the Providence Police Department, especially the district lieutenants.
Yeah.
They attend the community meetings.
Yeah, right.
They're the boots on the ground. They're hearing the complaints, and many of these folks, many of the lieutenants will provide cell phone numbers, email addresses,
Right.
and they're in constant contact with the community. So that's an important, critical piece of community engagement and getting neighbors more involved. I would like to see more of it throughout the city of Providence, and I think what's happening in Elmhurst could be a model for the rest of the city.
That's right.
I know Cheryl Simmons does a phenomenal job.
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
she's relentless.
She is.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
is. We
she's
need more of
relentless.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there should, I mean, you don't want to diminish community activism, but it shouldn't be that community activism has to fill all the voids in what's already being paid for within the city's infrastructure.
No, I agree, and that's where investing taxpayer dollars is so important. Are we investing in the right areas that make an impact on our quality of life here in Providence, and public safety? It's at the top of the list.
This weekend, you know, we just saw what happened in Las Vegas, unfortunately. This weekend, we have a massive crowds in Federal Hill. We're going to see, you know, 50, depending on the weather, 50 to 100,000 people. We have restaurants on all this week talking about it. And when we've got a slightly depleted staffing levels at the police department, there's needs to be a little more urgency in staffing up. Are we ready for that next level, do you think? Does the council feel comfortable that we've got enough in public safety to deal with this very complex next generation of threats? I mean, this house breaks and car thefts are one thing, but this is a level of complexity and danger that, you know, most of us never could have dreamed of.
Yeah, and that's going to take a collaborative effort, right? That's going to take an effort between local police, state police, folks at the federal level. All have to be in constant contact with each other, sharing information, sharing data. That's how we keep our streets safe, especially some of these violent, horrific crimes like
Just
in
amazing.
Las Vegas. And then we also have to look at some of our gun laws.
Yeah.
We have to look at gun legislation. We have to get serious and tough about it, especially in Washington. I know where our delegation stands. I would like to see the Republican Party play a greater role, a proactive role, in stopping some of these incidents before they happen.
Listen, I appreciate you taking all the time to come
Thank you,
over
Josh. I
to Go
appreciate it.
Local Live. We've got to get you on more often. You're a rock star on here. Yeah, we got to get you on regularly. Listen, have a great 3-day weekend.
Thank you,
Looks
you
like
too.
Saturday and Sunday are going to be great.
Yeah.
Monday's a little iffy,
Good.
but if you have such a good time Friday and Saturday and Sunday, you may need Monday to catch your breath, right?
I might. I hope to see you on Apples Avenue
We will
on
be up
Sunday
there on the
for
weekend.
the Columbus Day Parade.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And